Welcome back to Simply Scratch Kitchen. My name is Hannah if you're new here, and I'm excited because today we are going to get a whole bunch of freezer meal prep done together. I love having these things in the freezer ready to go on busy weeknights so I can put together from scratch meals without all the time it takes to cook from scratch. I'm especially excited today because today's video is in collaboration with Emily from My Thrifty Kitchen. She's also going to be sharing a bunch of great freezer meal dinner ideas as well as snack prep ideas as we head back into this back to school season. She's a stay-at-home mom to 2 children, and so you know she knows how to stretch food on a budget. Again, I'm going to leave her channel linked below, and I hope that you will go check that out to get double the freezer meal prep ideas. So with that, let's get into it, and I'm going to show you what we're working on this week. So if you watched my Aldi haul video, I got a really good deal on some boneless, skinless chicken thighs here. So I decided to just right away get these in my Instapot and get them cooked up. I did not want to stash them away in the fridge and risk them going bad since these were near their expiration date. So I went ahead and put all of this in my Instapot. I wasn't quite sure it was all going to fit, but it did. So this is about 7 pounds of chicken thighs that I got for about $10. So you see why I couldn't pass it up. And of course I'm doing just a little bit of water at the bottom, about a cup, to make sure my Instant Pot comes to pressure, and then just some salt and pepper. I want this just to be really basic so that I can turn it into taco meat or put it in soups or use it in more like creamy casseroles, things like that. So I cooked this for 35 minutes just because there's so much in there, and it worked perfectly. That seemed like the right amount of cook time. This finished cooking, and I sometimes will use my whisk to break up meat. I know some people will use like a hand mixer or a meat chopper, but this is what I had on hand and it worked just fine. I didn't need this in the smallest pieces because, again, I'm going to just use this for a lot of different recipes. I just want to have the chicken shredded and in the freezer. And so I ended up putting these in quart size freezer bags, and I got 3 bags worth of that. So that came out to about 5 pounds of chicken that I got put up in the freezer. And then I also put together just a bowl for my fridge for that week as well, because I did want to turn that into some chicken salad and use that for different recipes as well. So you could really go either way with this. You could store it in your refrigerator just for easy meals that week, or you can go ahead and freeze it. I did both, and I still have several bags in my freezer to use in upcoming weeks. Whenever I'm ready to cook it, I will usually just plop it straight from the bag into my pan. If it's something you need chilled meat for, like a chicken salad, I would just take the bag and move it to the refrigerator like the day before you need it, and it will thaw nicely that way as well. Another great part about cooking up chicken thighs is I've also got this good broth left at the bottom, so I will show you how I'm going to use that as well. So I'm just getting my refrigerator bowl filled up here, and as you can see, I had a lot stored over for that night's dinner, and then I just took this broth that was left over, and in that Aldi video I bought a little food storage container that I thought would work for kind of like a knockoff of the super cubes. So I'm just filling these up with my broth. I'm going to cover it up kind of like an ice cube tray and put it in my freezer. Each of these little compartments holds 1 cup of broth, and so I thought this was a perfect serving amount. You could probably do this a little less messy than I'm doing it, but I just put these in my freezer, and after they were fully frozen, I tried popping them out and they came out really easily. Later that week, I added one to some rice I was cooking, and it was just super easy. So I just had 2 cups of broth left at the bottom of this chicken here, but you can save every little bit of it. I had really good luck with this, and I love this because I can just add more stray broth to these other compartments as I have it, and I can pop them out into freezer bags to free up more space. I realized that I wanted to have some beef broth as well, and I had purchased these beef marrow bones at a grocery store that was going out of business actually a couple months ago, and they've been in my freezer. So I'm just doing 3 of those covered with water and some sea salt here, and I just covered this and left this on my stove for the entire day. You can definitely add veggies if you want to, but this turned out really rich, and I went ahead and froze this, but I will link below how to can chicken broth. I've done that as well, and it's really nice. I just like to preserve the nutrients in it by freezing it sometimes, so that is what I decided to do this time. I really like having individual ingredients prepped that I can use in a variety of meals, but I also wanted to prep some breakfasts as well that would be really quick to go in the freezer. So I just had some sausage patties I needed to use up, and I crumbled those into just sort of ground sausage here. And we're going to make these really fun breakfast muffin cups. So you're going to start with 2 cups of flour, and then we're going to add some baking soda and some salt. I will link the recipe below that I'm using here, and I only made one little change. I'll show you what that is. I'm going to combine my dry ingredients with my favorite Danish dough whisk. I really enjoy using this for baked goods and breads and things like that. And so we're going to be making a version of like a McDonald's McGriddle in a cup, and obviously it's going to be even healthier. I'm using my organic all-purpose flour here, and then we're going to add our sausage to this, as well as about a cup of shredded cheese. You want to combine your sausage crumbles and your cheese first, just because it will be a lot harder to get it evenly distributed after you add the wet ingredients. So I'm just adding my sausage from the pan, drain that if you need to, and then we're going to be adding after that about 6 tablespoons of butter. Next, we're adding 1 cup of whole milk, and I'm using kind of like a Fairlife milk that has higher protein in it, just so I can get these to have a really good protein content. And the recipe calls for 1 egg, but I went ahead and added 2, which changes the texture just slightly, but I didn't mind it at all, and I just wanted a little bit more nutrition in these. So combine that really well. These come together really quickly, and I love having these in my freezer because breakfast is just one of those meals where I don't want to be waiting around for it to cook all morning. This recipe does call for a tablespoon of maple syrup just for that kind of McGriddle flavor, but you can omit that if you want more of a savory flavor. I'm going to get these scooped into my muffin tins. I really enjoy these silicone muffin cups. The only thing is that they're a little bit smaller than your typical muffin pan. So as you'll see, I'll get like 1.5 dozen every time I make a batch that would normally make 1 dozen. So that's what I've got here, and I don't mind it at all because usually my kids will not eat one that's bigger than this. So it ends up being a perfect size for us. They pop out super easy, and they're very easy to clean. I'm filling these all the way to the top because these aren't going to rise quite as much as a typical muffin would, and I want these to be a nice filling size for breakfast. These are going to go in the oven on 375 for about 25 minutes, but keep an eye on them until they are golden brown. I'm excited for this next recipe because I've got some new Einkorn grains from Azure Standard that I'm going to be grinding up, and we're going to be making Einkorn blueberry muffins. I'm going to be mixing my wet ingredients together first, and again, I'll have the recipe for these muffins in the description box below, but we're just starting with some milk, some butter, our eggs, and vanilla. I love having high protein breakfast in the freezer to just grab and go, especially when they come in a carbohydrate package. But this is one of the great things about freshly milled grains is they're actually really high in fiber and protein, so you can feel great about eating them. Again, I'm just combining this with my Danish dough whisk. I do like how well this breaks up eggs and combines liquids as well as flour. I'm going to be adding my 1/2 cup of coconut sugar. You can also use brown sugar or date sugar, whatever you like. I just like something a little more than white sugar for flavor. And then I'm adding my baking soda, baking powder, and salt like you would in any muffin recipe. And then I'm going to add even a little bit more protein, a little more fiber to these muffins by adding a cup of oats. And I'm going to mix those in and just let them sit and soak for a second while I get my grains ready. For this recipe, I'm going to be using half fresh ground einkorn and half all-purpose flour. This is a good way to get your feet wet with freshly milled grains while still maintaining that texture that you're kind of used to with the fluffier baked goods. It just helps you get a good feel for the moisture level you need in these muffins, and eventually you can switch over to full grains if you like. If you obviously do not have whole grains on you, just go ahead and follow the directions below and use all-purpose flour like you normally would. This will be a nice stiff dough, and then I'm going to stir in about 1.5 cups of frozen blueberries, and you could certainly do other berries if you like, but this is what I have on hand. And then we are going to take our other breakfast muffins out of the oven. I'm going to get those moved over onto a tray, and then we can wipe out these muffin cups and use them for our blueberry muffins. That's what I love about these. They're so easy to transfer things out of and then bake again immediately because it doesn't leave behind all of that crusty stuff. With these, once they're cool, I'm going to store them in a gallon freezer bag so that I'm able to just pop one out at a time. You can heat them in the microwave for about a minute and they come out perfectly done. You could use a toaster oven as well, whatever you have and like to use. The point is that these cook up really, really quickly, and they're great high in protein. I wiped out these muffin cups, and then I'm just going to fill them up with my blueberry muffin batter here. These are going to cook on 375 as well, so you don't need to even change the temperature of your oven. And you're going to give these about 20 minutes. Again, just check on them depending on your oven, depending on your pan, but 20 minutes should be about good. And I'm going to do the same thing here, freeze these and just pop them in the microwave when I'm ready to eat. One of my last favorite things to have in the freezer is homemade biscuits. Let me tell you, this is going to be the best biscuit recipe you've ever tried, and because we are batch cooking them, you're going to spend so little time putting these together and be able to use fresh biscuits anytime you want. The reason I like to freezer prep these is because I don't just use them as a side for a meal. You can use them for breakfast biscuits. You can put them on top of like a pot pie filling and have a really quick pot pie. There are so many different ways to use freezer biscuits, and I come up with new ones all of the time. And so I love having these in my freezer. And because biscuits get really, really fluffy when the butter is ice cold, cooking them straight from the freezer produces this incredible biscuit texture. So I'm going to leave my full recipe. This is my own biscuit recipe that I love down in the description box below. If you see me make biscuits before, you know sometimes I will use a cheese shredder to shred my butter in, which I still love. Today I'm just cutting my butter into cubes because it does go a little bit faster when you've got a bigger batch you're working with. And then I'm just going to use a good old-fashioned pie pastry cutter, biscuit cutter, however you call it, and this comes together so quickly with that. Sometimes the old things are just the best, so I'm going to use that and cut my butter in until we get kind of just like a chunky sandy texture. And the reason I love doing this as a batch prep is because it really makes no difference whether you're creating 36 biscuits or 12 biscuits. It really comes together about all the same. That chunk is still too big, so we're going to keep cutting it for about another minute, and I'll show you what it looks like when the butter is the right texture. You want it looking about like this with the small little chunks of butter mixed in here. Next, you're going to add milk, or you can also use buttermilk, but I often have just milk on hand, and we're going to start with a cup of that, and then we're going to gradually add more as we need it. So try to pull your dough together and then add about another 1/4 cup of milk at a time until your dough is still kind of shaggy, but it comes together all in a ball. In total, I added about 1.5 cups of milk here. And then I decided that I needed to work with it with my hands, which I think is just typical for biscuits. So we'll do that and pull it all together here. What you're seeing here is a very realistic representation of how long it took me to make these biscuits. I think I checked my video and it was 8 minutes total from first mixing them to cutting them up. So if you only spend 8 minutes making biscuits and then keep these in your freezer, you're gonna have a really delicious baked good in your freezer that took you under 10 minutes to put together. So I'm going to pull out my board here and flour it, and then I'm going to pull this into about 3 chunks here, because I'm going to take another shortcut, which is actually just cutting these biscuits with my knife and not even worrying about cutting it with a circle cutter, re-rolling it. I don't roll it either. I pat it with my hands until it's about a 1/2 inch thick, and then I just cut it in 4s here. And it's totally fine to have biscuits that are shaped like this. If you want to round out the edges, feel free to do that. You absolutely can. But for my purposes, a lot of times putting these with casseroles, they all cook together and are perfect as is. One of the keys for me about getting food prepped is to make it as simple as possible. It doesn't always have to be aesthetic or exactly how you would make it all the time, but just being able to have these items in my freezer to cook up. I would rather have high quality food ready to go than to wait around and make everything perfect. This batch right here I have is a little bit bigger, so I'm just going to cut it into 6 pieces. And I'm storing all of these in a freezer bag, just like the muffins, so I can pull out however many biscuits I need at a time and get those cooked. I went ahead and cooked up a few biscuits here because me and my girls wanted to eat some, of course. When you go to cook these, just cook them straight from frozen on 400 degrees, and they'll cook for about 15 minutes, and they come out so golden and flaky. You see the way the butter melts onto the bottom of the pan. These are so good and delicious. So we ended up with about 18 biscuits, 18 breakfast muffins, and 18 high-protein blueberry muffins, as well as about 7 pounds of cooked and shredded chicken thighs. We got that bone broth in the fridge, and then another about 3 quarts of beef broth as well. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found some good ideas that are going to make your weeks just a little bit easier. And again, don't forget to check out Emily's channel, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.